Not too long ago, we dropped a video detailing the top 5 bait uniforms, or top 6 bait uniforms that I felt were going to get replaced sooner rather than later. So now here we are with essentially the opposite take. These are 5 uniforms that I think are still amazing after 1 year, and I still don't think that they're going to be replaced in the very near future for one reason or another. Let's kick off the list with a uniform that I used to hate, and honestly, I'll admit that I was wrong about this one, and I saw the light: Magneto Seasonal. With Magneto Seasonal, I think what needs to be said about this uniform, aside from being a seasonal, which obviously sucks a little bit, is that you have to invest all the way. You got to take him all the way to tier 4 in order for this to really shine. And in most cases, if you want to push the really high level stuff, you got to give him a brilliant CTP. So there is quite an investment here. And I know that he's a crystal cost deluxe pack character, so there's all that. You have to finish the epic quest, there's all that. But it's really just a matter of looking, when you go through the filters and looking at blast villains and seeing how thin the crop is. Not to mention the fact that they recently turned both Enchantress and Mysterio into supports. Ebony is a support. You really have so little competition. And although Magneto is expensive, it's him or it's Mephisto or it's Strife or it's a premium character like Mr. Sinister. There's just a lot of really expensive alternatives. And so Magneto actually doesn't end up being that expensive, because at least with Magneto, you get the deluxe pack epic quest that you can farm forever. So yeah, I don't need Magneto bios anymore, but I farm that baby every day. And in return, how many bios do I have for Magneto? Let's take a look. 3,800. This dude is pumping bios at the wazoo for me to use on other characters. By the way, when I said Mr. Sinister, there's almost no chance he'll be able to compete with Magneto, even if he does get a rework in a tier 4, because they basically secured his position as a PvP blast villain when they gave him this immortality artifact. Same thing sort of goes for Strife, where they gave him the Adam Warlock PvP healing artifact. So really, truly, who is there to compete with Magneto? Maybe on the off chance they go with something crazy and free-to-play friendly like Red Skull and give him an insane tier 4, or possibly Mephisto. But again, even then with Mephisto, having the revive means he's more well-positioned for PvP. So it almost seems like there's no one. As crazy as it sounds, 1 year later, it seems like there's no one to replace Magneto. So his uniform could retain its value 100% for another full cycle of a year of 365 days and of 10 updates. And that's really what made me want to make this video, because it's kind of flabbergasting how good that uniform is. Second one I want to talk about here is Jean Grey Dark Phoenix. And it's no surprise here, some of the most popular mutants get sort of evergreen content and evergreen upgrades. We've seen this before with the original Jean, right? And we saw it with Jean Grey X-Men Red, where she really, once she's stuck in the meta, it took a really long time to get her out of the meta. And unless we see something crazy like tier 5, which I don't think we're going to be seeing in the next year, Jean really has nowhere to go in terms of going down. She's not going down. She has just too many weapons and too many abilities available for her, with revive, with a 40% flat damage reduction, with time freeze, with healing based on damage that she accumulates, with iframe ignore. Like, she had reflect on the tier 4 now. She has everything. She has literally every ability besides immortality. That's the only ability she doesn't have. She's absolutely busted. And I think they sort of designed her to be future-proof in a way. Is she always going to be the best for PvE and PvP? No. I think, and I said this in another video, that I think she's going to be replaced for PvE soon, because they want to balance out her value a little bit better. But that doesn't mean that she's going to lose her PvP value. And frankly, considering how much stronger she still is at the time of this recording compared to the number 2 Adam and the number 3 Wolverine in PvP, just imagine how much stronger a character would have to be to beat out all of these characters. Because Jean is already better than Wolverine. She's already better than Adam. So theoretically, if someone were to replace Jean, they would also have to replace Adam and Wolverine. And the amount of power creep that would have to represent is just mind-blowing, considering both Adam and Wolverine came out months after Jean, not before. So they're really, they really put her atop a pedestal that is nearly untouchable. My next pick is Spider-Man, and it's pretty straightforward. He's the most popular character ever. He's just the most recognizable, most popular fictional character in any universe for any IP. Everybody knows Spider-Man, And yeah, I think the devs would be silly not to give him a uniform every year. I think they're going to stick to that. They're going to give him uniforms. They're going to milk the shit out of this. And the best thing about Spider-Man is that they gave him such an evergreen artifact. They gave him such a strong artifact, which really anchors his value in PvP, because it literally allows him to dodge everything, regardless of ignore dodge. So unless the devs come out with some sort of new tech, which they couldn't retroactively apply to old characters and would only apply to select new characters, there's basically no way to counter this. And what that essentially means is that sometimes you queue up and you just lose to Spider-Man. That's exactly what that means, because sometimes he just has a streak of dodges and then you just lose because you can't hit him. And that's basically how it goes. And the thing with Spider-Man is, despite how strong they made him, they still left a ton of room for improvement. They certainly did not go all out with Spider-Man the way they did for Jean. So when you take a look at some of his skills here, they don't seem perfected at all, right? Like his iframe ignore skill, yeah, it's got a 70% penetration, that's great, and it's on a 6-second cooldown, that's really cool. But some of his other skills are pretty straightforward and sort of almost a little bit lackluster. I mean, frankly, look at his passives, right? He doesn't have any skill damage bonus damage, which makes him synergize insanely well with Chasm for PvE, but also leaves the door open for more buffs in the future. So I actually foresee Spider-Man continuing to get buffs. We know Sony is going to continue to make Spider-Man movies, so there's never going to be a shortage of content for Marvel Future Fight to tap into. But even just with this uniform back to basics, I think this one is still going to be good enough to have some relevance in PvP for the next year, strictly because of this artifact. Coming in at number 4, we have Riri Williams. And although this is a leadership support uniform, I think this one is going to withstand the test of time for a couple of reasons. One, there's basically nothing on the horizon for Ironheart besides her own show, which is probably just going to be a small upgrade on this uniform with more PvE aspects. And it's not really going to double down on the support stuff because they're going to make her kind of the focus of the update. What does that mean? That means that this uniform is still going to retain its value because it still gives you a 55% energy attack buff for all blast allies. And then for all allies, period, they get this insane 35 boss damage dealt and 25% ignore dodge. Her combination of leadership and support rivals some of the support buffs that certain paywall or seasonal uniforms give. It's very, very strong. And that's why I think it's always going to retain its value. Now, in general, blast types don't have as much value as other types do for niche content or like kind of restrictive content like ABX and ABL. But for World Boss and GBR, you're looking at one of the best lead support combos ever, and one that can easily compete with the likes of Valkyrie and White Fox, and also has the added flexibility of other buffs that the character could receive in the future because of their MCU setup. And last but not least, I want to talk about She-Hulk and her Attorney at Law MCU Disney Plus uniform. Now, regardless of what you think about the show, this was a really good rework and upgrade for She-Hulk. On top of that, the combat female hero class is just so painfully bad that She-Hulk and Titania are still at the top over a year later. That, combined with the fact that she got an artifact that makes her a support, means that this uniform may end up being as good as you want to get for She-Hulk, right? If in the meantime we get combat hero females that replace She-Hulk because they get tier 4 and she doesn't, because there's nothing on the horizon specifically for She-Hulk unless she's in some sort of team up or collaboration, you're still looking at one of the best leaderships in the game, right? Lawyer Up, and the most unique in terms of scaling damage to an insane degree against male types, and that scales damage, not attack. On top of the fact that she is the only one who has, besides Abomination, who has a support passive for gamma radiation, which means that with this artifact, you're essentially allowing her to tap into any future value that Hulk is going to give you, Amadeus Cho, or any other future gamma characters because of that. So this uniform makes her functional, as a DPS, but then it also makes her a better, like the best version of her leadership thus far that we've seen. Sure, in the future, they could power creep that with another even better, more supportive uniform, but I just don't see that happening in the next year, which means that this is basically the best version that we're going to see of her dropped back in 2022 that's going to last at least until the end of 2024. So with that, it makes my list of top 5 best uniforms after a year. These are year-plus old uniforms that I still think hold a ton of value, and I actually don't see them getting replaced directly in the next 12 months. They may be replaced indirectly, or they may be introduced to competing uniforms for competing characters, but I don't think we'll see their value drop to 0 anytime soon, which I think makes these super duper valuable. Anywho, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.